Hi, everybody. I'm Dave,
And I'm John.
and this is Coffee and Capes, our podcast where we talk about two of our favorite things: coffee, drinking coffee, and geek culture.
What? That's crazy. Who would have thought we would ever do such a thing?
Only everybody that's ever met us.
Only everybody is fair. That's totally fair. Only everybody that has ever met us. They're like, oh, John and Dave are talking about coffee and comic books and geek culture. Yeah, that's not shocking.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, that's par for the course. We're good.
Yes, because we are enthusiasts. We like coffee and we like geek culture and comic books especially, but all things geek culture or most things geek culture. And we want them to succeed. That's what we mean by enthusiasts. We want them to succeed and be good, and we want other people to enjoy them as well as they want to. Like, I don't want to force anybody to do anything, but I want the products to be good enough
it might go well with our theme for the day, to force people.
That's a good point. Yes. Yeah. You will like it.
You will.
Well, that was fun. Okay. We'll fix that in post-production. What's that? We don't have post-production?
We don't have post-production. For all of you professional podcasters to listen to our podcast, just so you know, we don't do post-production. We are our own blooper reel and we just let it fly.
That's right. Absolutely. So you found us in some manner or another.
Absolutely.
Let's go through the rundown of all of the ways that you can connect with us. John, do that for us, please.
Yeah, so if you're watching this, guys, as always, you probably found us on YouTube, or you have some kind of psychic ability to see through our eyes, in which case, get out of my head. You don't want to be in there. It's weird.
No.
Yeah, it's a weird place.
Run away. Run away.
Run. And then, of course, we're on the socials. So we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. You can find us coffee on Instagram, coffee _ the letter N _ word capes. There is no underscore in Facebook. And I can't remember if there's one in Twitter or not, but that's okay.
I don't think so.
No. You can email us if you'd like to at supers, SUPERS, at coffeeandcapes.com. And then you can go to coffeeandcapes.com. And
what will I find if I go there, John?
Well, right now you'll find a countdown, but pretty soon you'll find the ability to buy Coffee and Capes coffee.
What?
Yeah, I know. We're super excited. As a matter of fact, today's episode is brought to you by Coffee and Capes Coffee Empire Roast. Bum, 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 bum. Everybody knows that. Am I the only person who can't think of Darth Vader or the Empire without hearing that in their head every single time?
I don't know anybody that can. Who could think of Darth Vader without hearing that in their head?
Right. And sometimes I just start doing that in the car next to Rachel, and she'll look at me and be like, oh, yeah.
True story. A Christmas ago, I asked our music person at church to combine the Imperial March with the Carol of the Bells and use that as the theme of our service.
That's amazing.
Right? It was.
That is amazing. That's
shout out to Reed Spears, who's incredible and can do that sort of thing on the fly.
That's so great.
Well, it wasn't quite on the fly, but yeah. No,
right, yeah,
the Imperial March is iconic and for good reason.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes.
So Empire's Roast, guys, is a single origin dark roast, and it has notes of milk chocolate, honey, and a hint of citrus. It is the perfect cup of coffee when expanding your galactic empire. So, so good. So yeah, guys, that's going to be available soon on coffeeandcapes.com. You can find the link for the website in Linktree, on Instagram. It's in Twitter, Facebook. It'll be, if you're watching this, it'll be down in the notes. But yeah, come in, check it out. And I think that's all the particulars about how you can find us and our rundown on coffee today.
Yay. Enjoying it. Oh, look at that. We're both enjoying it in our Coffee and Capes mug.
Yeah, this is the signature Coffee and Capes mug.
Heroically great coffee.
Yeah, heroically great coffee. Oh,
yummy.
Hey, let's not forget guys, make sure you click the link for the contest. That will be wrapping up soon. It is our Great Coffee Lunch giveaway contest. We've got a couple different prize packages. Thanks to Nicole and Sarah over at Ladybird Provisions, as always.
Thanks, Ladybird Provisions. We love you.
Yeah, you guys are amazing. They've contributed. Taylor over at TM Comics for contributing to the prize
Thanks, Taylor.
package.
You're great too.
Yep. And then, of course, you get some coffee. You get a coffee mug, no matter which prize package you win. And if you win the grand prize, you get a Samsung Galaxy tablet and a year subscription to the Marvel Unlimited app, so you can read all the back issues of all the comics. It's really, I love that app.
Oh, it's so great. There's something like 20,000 comics on it.
Yeah, I'm
It's
making
insane.
my way through all of them.
And that the Marvel Unlimited app and a tablet go together spectacularly well.
Yeah, much better than trying to read on your phone, especially
for sure.
For those of us with bad eyes.
Yeah, those of us who are old.
Yeah, those of us that are old. By the way, I do want to give a quick shout out to Genre Geeks. So the crew over there, we did that little blurb for them a while back, and it's in their last week's episode. They put it up. We're going to send them some coffee, and we're going to send them a thing of Nesquik, because one of them doesn't like coffee but likes hot chocolate. So we'll send you some Nesquik, weirdo.
I mean, let your freak flag fly, I guess.
I don't know.
I don't understand people like that, but okay.
Yeah, there's some great guys. So yeah. Check them out.
Is that our fan fiction for the day, or do we have something else as well?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Good transition, buddy. Our fan fiction actually comes from a live conversation I had this week with Gary, our friend Gary over at Graham Cracker Comics. Hey, Gary. Gary, I was in this week picking up what was in my pull box, some King Spawn. New King Spawn. And I was chatting with Gary, and Gary actually brought up that he had seen the Batman, and he had a different feel and different opinion on the Joker, or sorry, not the Joker, the Riddler. So Gary's take was that he thought it's interesting that lately in a lot of the Batman movies that it seems like there's this tendency to try to lean the villain into more of a Joker-esque personality. And I can't say that he's wrong. I definitely at times during the Batman thought, and we talked about this, it's a much darker Riddler, much more vicious Riddler. I thought it was a great take on it, really great take on it. But he absolutely had a little bit of the Joker to him. Gary brought up Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. We've talked about that before. Right. He 100% had that kind of like Joker vibe to him. Yeah. So not sure. Maybe Gary's thought was maybe it was because, Heath Ledger's iconic portrayal of the Joker got him an Oscar. And so everybody feels like they need to do this maniacal villain in that universe. But he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong. He had a good point.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And for all of our thoughts on the Batman, check out our previous week's episode where we reviewed it.
Yeah, we have a lot of episodes, guys. Thanks for everybody that goes back into our back episodes and listens to them. It's kind of crazy to see the top listened episode right now, weirdly enough, is the Matrix review.
Really?
Yeah.
Did not see that coming.
Me either. It was interesting. Apparently, people are really interested in what we had to say around the Matrix, bro. Whoa. But,
Well, thanks, Gary, for that. It's an interesting, and I think you can't argue with him. Like, clearly the Heath Ledger Joker influence continues all these years later.
Yeah, for sure. And, that just kind of brings up with Tyler over at TM Comics, Gary over at Graham Cracker Comics. I do want to say, hey, support your local comic shop or your online, favorite comic auction. And let's keep those places open to help bring up more generations of geeks who are in love with the art that we grew up with. And that seems to be now a major inspiration across all kinds of on-screen stuff. Man,
Yeah.
Who would have thought when we were kids watching Super Friends, right? That at some point we would see like all of our comic book heroes start to come to life on screen.
Beyond all young Dave's wildest dreams.
Right? Yeah. Young John would have been like, what? His mind would be blown.
Yeah. You know what? Before we totally transition there, can I just add a little bit here? Also, a live conversation to your point about getting the next generations involved and responding to the Batman. So my daughter, who's 14, saw it with her friends, said she was kind of bored, came home, and like the next day said, Dad, can we watch The Dark Knight? Because that's actually entertaining.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But again, like the legacy that Heath Ledger has left resonates not just with us old geeks.
Yeah. And you know, that brings up a really good point. I wanted to actually bring up. It's interesting. Like, there are rave reviews out there around the Batman. Like, everybody really likes it. It's right up there for most people with The Dark Knight. I know for you, it's like right up there with Batman Begins.
Yeah.
Dark Knight is ahead of it. But in looking at the Instagram, post around that episode for us, there are a number of people who found it boring.
Yeah.
They didn't think it had enough, and they didn't really care for it. I was really surprised by that, to see the number of people. And, you know, of course it was, I love seeing that stuff. I know you do too, like the differing opinions, because it sparks so many of these conversations.
Right.
But yeah, it was really interesting. Like, if you go back into our Instagram and you take a look, like there's lots of people who didn't really care for it. And I got to go back in and like all those comments today. And sorry if I've missed your comments and haven't had time to respond lately, but you know, we like all those comments because we respect everybody's opinion.
Yeah.
You know, when we like a comment, it doesn't necessarily mean we agree with the comment. It means we're happy that you took the time to come in and interact with us. Man,
100%.
we're so like, it's such an honor to have people follow us and interact with us. Like, it's kind of crazy sometimes, like how many people, we were talking about this the other day, you know, when you were like, hey, like the people that just randomly are like, hey, I was listening to your podcast the other day.
Yeah.
Like, really?
That's so great. Thank you.
We're up to 11 listeners.
Right. And only 9 of them are you and me.
Yeah, only 9 of them are you. Well, okay, then my parents, you know, because my mom always says I'm good at things. All right, we're now
my
like
mom knows what a podcast is.
I don't think my mom knows what a podcast is either, and I love my mom, but I don't think she
Yeah.
knows. My dad knows, and he listens. I think my dad listens because I asked him, "Have you listened?" He's like, "Of course I have." No, in all fairness, my dad listens because he.
Thanks, Don. Keep listening for us.
Thanks, Dad. All right, Dave. What are we talking about today?
Well, you've had a couple of clues so far, and we are talking today about why it's good to be bad. We're talking about some of our favorite villains across geek culture.
Yeah, because you can't have a hero without a villain. Like, you just can't.
I guess it's true. Yeah.
I mean, we talk about
certainly so many of these products, especially the movies, tend to come down to how compelling is the villain.
Yeah. Yep. So, Dave, you want to start us off? Like, and I think it's fair to say, like, we talked about, do we have a format for this? And we're not. This is literally just going to be we're not ranking anybody. We're not saying this one's better than this one. We're just talking about like why are they such a great villain? What do they embody as a villain? You know, because there's different kinds of villains.
Yeah. So to me, the quintessential cross-platform villain is, well, I don't want to steal your thunder. It's probably the one you've got there, but I'm interested in how, like, I went with for those of you who are watching on YouTube, I've got the picture of the Legion of Doom the animated Legion of Doom from Super Friends, from their like headquarters, which thanks to John having the picture of a particular,
Right?
yeah, look how freaking similar those are. And
it's so close.
yeah, so I was really curious which came first. And according to the interwebs, which we all know cannot be wrong,
Never.
The Legion of Doom was first introduced in 1978 in the Super Friends episode, which means it came a year after. It was September of 78, which means it came a year after the first Star Wars movie. So that suggests to me, now they could have been drawing before that. Probably were drawing it a long
That's what I
time
was just
before.
thinking is like, did they draw it before
Yeah,
though?
which came first, the look of Darth Vader or the look of the Legion of Doom headquarters? I can't say for sure. It might be. I feel like Vader influenced the Legion of Doom.
It's possible, but I think the other thing too is that it's also a little Black Manta-esque.
It's true. Yeah, that's true. Which is weird because Black Manta is not nearly the like head guy there. But I think what we've been talking about. So the reason I went with Legion of Doom is that it connects to Vader, who's just as iconic as it gets. But based on what we've just been talking about with all the Batman movies, like I feel like Joker is probably the next one up there. Like between especially in the last, well, for sure since 2008.
Yeah.
With Heath Ledger, and then with a couple of years ago, was that 19 that the Joaquin Phoenix movie came out? Like we got its own thing. Like people care about the Joker, and Jack Nicholson back in 89, Jack Nicholson's thing really came, and in the comics, at least the ones I've seen, obviously Joker is the prime mover of bad guys for sure in the Batman comics, and in some ways even in the entire DC. Like we've talked about this, how without the Joker being as crazy, maniacal, awful, evil, murderous as he is, there's no Injustice. Like that whole Injustice storyline doesn't happen without Joker devising a plot to destroy Superman's life.
Well, and I love the Joker as a character. He is the one villain in, I think, comics in general who never exercises any form of restraint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
If he thinks it, he's going to try to do it. Like that's just all there is to it. If it crosses his brain, he's going to try and do it. And there's never like a justification for it.
Right. And I love that part about his story too, that his backstory is that we don't get to know his backstory.
Right.
And that makes him all the more terrifying and all the more unpredictable. And it's the whole, the Dark Knight thing, like Alfred said, it. Some people just want to watch the world burn. And that's him. That you cannot understand him. You cannot reason with him. None of that. And that's really, that's why I think he probably got underplayed. Joker doesn't even really stand out to me as what role he played in the Legion of Doom in the cartoon.
Well,
it's been since later that really took over, I think.
Yeah. And I think part of that is though, if you watch stuff with like the Harley Quinn animated series, which we're finally getting a third season.
Yay!
Thank you, HBO Max, for jumping on that finally. But if you go back and you watch some of that, and this rings true through like some of the animated movies too, even the Legion is hesitant to like deal with the Joker. They have crafted and created plans that didn't include the Joker, which in turn wound up gaining the Joker's wrath, where he came in and started, throwing monkey wrenches into everything because he felt slighted and offended that they didn't include him in some evil plan. The Joker is so unpredictable and so insane that even other villains are like, I don't want to touch this guy. Like, I don't want to go near him. And for me, I think the quintessential Joker moment for me comes in A Death in the Family, when he beats Jason Todd within an inch of his life. And it was the first time in my time reading comics and reading Batman that I had seen the Joker this like ready to go that far. And he literally beats Jason Todd within an inch of his life, leaves him conscious and able to move a little bit, and then walks out of the building having planted all those bombs, and he blows him up.
Yeah.
Like that was, and granted, I know that Jason Todd's death was something that everybody voted on, but they could have done it in a way that was different. But to allow that moment for the Joker to like really unhinge and beat him to death, that was, I mean, to me, the only thing that comes close to that is when he kills Lois Lane and blows up Metropolis. But even that, to me, because the Jason Todd killing felt so personal, right, and so intimate, and it truly was insane, like absolutely insane.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I think that goes to show, if you compare him to Lex Luthor and a lot of the other villains still have some semblance of a code,
some semblance of humanity, some semblance of,
yeah, like
occasionally a little bit
in
of
their
empathy,
head.
maybe.
They think
Right,
they're doing something right.
Yeah,
they
right.
think they're
we're
doing
making the
something
world better for
right,
this
or making the
way.
world better.
Yeah.
A good example of that right now is Wilson Fisk in Devil's Reign, as the mayor of New York. Like Wilson Fisk, you know, he's obviously clearly got a thing against Matt Murdock, but somewhere in him he has this code, and he believes he's doing the best he can for the city.
Right. Yeah. There's a moment in the TV show in the first season, I think, where he says, I was trying to save this city.
Yeah.
Like, why are you fighting me? I'm trying to save this city.
Yes. And in his mind, like that's Lex. There's so many more. It's Sinestro, right? So many of them. The Joker does not have that thought.
Right.
There is no thought in his head of, I'm doing this because I think it'll make things better. He's like, I'm doing this because it sounded fun.
Yeah.
Right. I'm doing this because somebody's not paying attention to me.
Right. Yeah.
Right? I am the center of everything. So yeah,
that's really good. I know I've talked about this before, but I still feel like, and it's reinforced because, like I said, I just watched it with my daughter, but the moment in Dark Knight, the movie, where he tells how I got the scar for the second time, and it really clicks in that, oh, you don't get to know. He will just say whatever the hell he wants. Tells a great story.
100%.
But you don't get to know what actually happened. Yeah. I think that's brilliant storytelling.
No, I agree. And again, Heath Ledger did such a phenomenal job. I really hope they give Barry Keoghan an opportunity to play the Joker, in the way that he looks in the cell in the Batman. Especially in that dark, gritty noir, like it'd be great to see.
Yeah.
And and maybe it would get rid of the Jared Leto thing.
Yeah. I honestly don't know if I want to root for that or not. Maybe they need to
let it lie
there. Yeah.
Go some different directions.
Yeah. But we'll see.
Yeah.
I won't be against it, but I'm just not, I don't know if I'm rooting for it.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. Well, that's a lot about the Joker, and not all new territory. So, John, your turn. Who comes to mind? Who's your villain?
Well, I mean, obviously we got Darth Vader in the background, right? And I have gushed over my love for Darth Vader a number of times. And the one thing I will say about episodes 1, 2, and 3 that were kind of their saving grace for me was,
you mean Star Wars episodes 1, 2, and 3, and not Coffee and Capes episodes 1, 2, and 3, right?
I mean, Coffee and Capes episodes 1, 2, and 3 are probably better than Star Wars episodes.
Well,
1, 2, and 3.
I mean, that's setting the bar low, but yes.
All right, I'm building a rocket to go to space. My ego.
You want to go to space, little puppy? I'll take you to space.
Yeah, I'll take you to space. So in Star Wars episodes 1, 2, and 3, the one kind of saving grace is, and it started really with episode 2, when Anakin goes out into the desert of Tatooine and slays all of the Tusken Raiders, like all of them.
Yeah.
The little ones, the women, he just like goes out and kills them all. And we see this evolution of this very confused, scared, young, like super powerful in the Force kid into what you see over my shoulder, which is the face of galactic terror.
Yeah.
Right. And we've talked about this before, like through A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. Like, yeah, he's intimidating and everything else and whatnot, but we really never see on screen how incredibly vicious he is until Rogue One.
Yeah. Other than the random, like, oh, I'm going to force choke a general here and there.
Yeah. But even then, I think, due to the time of,
right. Yeah.
The time of
the level of CGI possible, the level of effects possible at the time,
the level of effects, but also I think the era that the original 3 were done in, right? I don't think anybody was ready to see somebody like get choked to death and killed on screen. And he does it like, they do a cut every now and then to all of a sudden like a general like dropping to the floor and but they never show the full thing happen. In Rogue One, we see him as Darth Vader going through all that. In Revenge of the Sith, we see Anakin at the end kill everybody, right?
Right.
The younglings in the temple and the I can never remember their names. But the
other Jedi guys.
No, the bad guys. The Trade Federation.
Oh,
he goes through and destroys, like he goes to Mustafar and kills everybody in the Trade Federation. But Darth Vader as a character, like truly Darth Vader, we see in Rogue One, and then in the comics, whoa, man.
Yeah.
He's
a force of nature. Yeah.
Right. But he's also insanely powerful.
Yeah.
And
he's another one. You're not really sure what motivates him. Is he just angry at the world? Like it's not really clear. So you get a little bit of that craziness of Joker in him as well, that there's really no reasoning with him. And anybody he strikes a bargain with just expects that he's going to eventually turn on them and kill them too.
Yeah. And I was going to say, so that's the one thing I think about Vader that separates him out from Joker, is that he will strike bargains to work with people. But at least in the comics, you see like Dr. Aphra, and this happens often in the Dr. Aphra story, like every single person that agrees to work with Vader has this understanding, like at any point in time, he could like just turn and kill him because he has that history of doing it. His motivation for working with them is his. Like he's not going to share that with you, and he's not going to tell you why he's doing something. And if you offend him, he's just going to remove you from the picture, because in his mind, like it's convenient to have you help him now. But if he really runs it through to the end, he doesn't need you.
Right.
And everybody knows that.
Which is, again, terrifying.
Sure. Yeah. Especially when you're like this all powerful Dark Lord of the Sith who just likes to like, just seems to, if anybody that crosses his path is toast. So yeah, anyway, like I think we've probably spent enough time on Darth Vader too, because we've talked about him in the past so much. So yeah, we can move on to somebody else. Dave, who else you got on kind of your list? It's a big list.
It is a big list. My list is heavy with comic book characters. I'm trying to like think beyond that a little bit. Yeah. I was trying to think of one who's like, is there like a Star Trek villain? And there's
oh yeah.
I mean, you could go Khan.
Khan was great.
Yeah.
He's a great villain.
Yeah. It's not, nothing that has near the cultural cachet that Vader or Joker does, but If
Oh,
if
buddy,
there's
I got
if
one
there's
for
a
you.
Star Trek villain, it's probably that one, or maybe like the Romulans or the Klingons. I guess
Oh,
as a
you're
no. Who am I
missing the
missing?
one I thought of last night.
Okay.
The Queen Borg.
Oh gosh, right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, because again, it's
Terrifying.
the right, because it's the just the maniacal, not maniacal, but the
Methodical.
methodical. Yes, that's what I was looking for.
Like
There's no
that
reasoning
one
with
makes
you.
my
There's
hair
no
stand up on
yeah,
my arm. Like
right.
I can remember the
Yeah.
first, and she's a long-standing one, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Khan felt very like brief in both times we saw Khan on screen,
Right.
but great villain in Star Trek.
Yeah.
The Klingons are always like, that's a group,
Yeah.
that's a race. Same with the Romulans. The Borg, granted, are a collective, but the Queen Borg sits at the center, and her one, I don't remember who plays her, but whoever it is, she's terrifying. The
Yeah.
idea of like the assimilation thought process. I remember the first time seeing her like not attached to the rest of her body was such a weird, like, okay, I don't want to end up as one of those things. Like,
right. Well,
that
and
seems
once
like,
again, you've got the whole, you can't reason with them. You can't make them feel anything. You can't appeal to any empathy or humanity or anything. It's just methodical, not well, in a way, killing machine, methodical assimilation machine,
of course,
that kills your personality.
Well,
So,
and the only way that, you know, Picard, by the way, if you haven't been watching the new Picard series on Paramount, I highly recommend it. I think it was Paramount or Peacock, one of those two.
it's Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
I have not seen it.
He's, man, just as an actor in general, I love him. Whether it's Professor X, whether it's Picard. Way back in the day, there was a movie called Excalibur from like the 70s, and he was a knight in that movie.
Yeah.
But he's just, and he's got such an iconic voice and the way he talks. But in the Star Trek series and eventually in the movie, the only way that he could think to beat the Borg was to become the Borg, because the Queen Borg was obsessed with Jean-Luc.
Yeah.
Was absolutely obsessed with him, wanted him specifically. It was the only like real emotion that character just seemed to display, was this desire to have him. And they had to take, and Data got assimilated, and you know, it was a whole, that was like, to me, out of all of the Star Trek villains that we saw, that was the one that even now I think back and I'm like, that one is terrifying. Like the Klingons are like barbarians.
Right. And there's a whole, you know, it gets a little uncomfortable when you like vilify a whole race of people in a show like that. Like, you know, 30 years ago, I wasn't aware enough to notice that, but now you kind of see it like, well, is that really how, you know? So the Borg definitely fits a better, like there's a better picture of what a true villain really is, I think.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, we probably differ a little bit on the whole Klingon and vilifying the whole race. Like there's just a history of that kind of stuff within any kind of like storytelling, in order to be able to do kind of the Joseph Campbell like hero's journey thing.
Yeah.
But that's like a whole different conversation. I think though, you know, as far as Star Trek goes, that's the pinnacle of like bad, scary thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I knew there was I was sitting there thinking about that one last night. I was like, oh, we're gonna go outside of like comics, and I immediately thought of Queen Borg, and I was like, oh, that one, just creepy, weird.
Yeah.
You know,
the veiny, like the bald, something about the being bald adds to.
Well, and then you see how they,
because it reduces the humanity, right?
Yeah, right. It reduces the humanity, and how they, like, when they captured like Federation people, and they showed, like, they did the pass through the cube, and you see these guys, and you know, the men and women being turned into Borg.
Yeah.
And it's not like like they're replacing arms and they're just doing all this like hackneyed surgery with people awake to make it. No thanks.
Yeah, it's bad.
All right.
Well, who you got next, John?
Oh, well, since we're venturing outside of like comic books a little bit, I gotta say, I am a huge fan of the old school 1980s slasher movies. I love them. I love them to death. And recently I rewatched Cabin in the Woods, which I think is probably the quintessential horror movie from kind of modern times. It's just so good and so funny, and Chris Hemsworth. But let's go back to the 80s and slasher movies. And for me, there is no better silent assassin than Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
The hockey mask is iconic.
Yep.
The large, like, machete chasing teenagers through the woods. He killed Kevin Bacon. They always found this massive human being to play him.
Yeah.
And there was, we talk about like no reasoning with the Joker, right? There's no reason.
Right.
You couldn't even get Jason Voorhees never talked.
Yeah.
He didn't speak. And he just showed up and brute strength, like cut people in half, like stuck them to trees with harpoons. Like he just did these horrifying deaths and terrified like campers, and then came back over and over and over and over.
And was super lumbering and slow, but somehow nobody could ever outrun him.
Dude, you could be Usain Bolt sprinting through the woods for minutes and stop to turn around and look,
and somehow he's still
and
right
when
there.
you turn back around, it's like machete to the face.
He's right on top of us.
Right? He's right on top of us. Now we can remember that whole race. But anyway,
right.
But yeah, I mean, it just and he spawned a whole bunch of those, right? We got Michael Myers in Halloween that came sometime shortly after that, who is terrifying as well because he doesn't really say anything.
Yeah.
But Jason Voorhees for me, man, that hockey mask, so iconic.
So when I have an 80s movie slasher on my list as well. Mine's kind of the other end of the spectrum though. I got to go with Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
Like I always enjoyed those. I've seen a couple of the Friday the 13th, but now there's 135 of them and half of them are in space or whatever. And it's gone way
it's a little insane, a little crazy. Yeah.
But those first couple of Nightmare on Elm Streets, man, like, terrifying. And the whole, like, there's sort of like a little Wolverine-esque thing with the razor claws. Yeah. But the sound, like him like scraping those on a wall or a window or whatever, or just the idea that, oh, guess what? You can't go to sleep.
Right.
If you go to sleep, you're dead.
Right. That was a terrifying concept, by the way, when I was
at some point you're gonna fall asleep.
Yeah. Dude, I think the first time I encountered a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, it was the summertime and it was insanely hot in my room and I laid in bed terrified, like just having those, very irrational thoughts, but you're young and like, and Freddy Krueger was a horrifying character.
Yeah.
Like just terrifying.
And I think he got quippier as the movies went along. For sure. Which made it a little more fun and got a little campy, which I'm fine with. Like that was part of the reason.
But it wasn't as like as purely scary. There wasn't as the first two. Those first two Nightmare on Elm Street movies were Johnny Depp. His death in the first Nightmare on Elm Street, where like he gets like thrown all over the room and then sucked into was he the one that got sucked into the waterbed and then the waterbed explodes with blood all over?
Remember, but probably.
God, I remember. I was like, whoa, it's so bad.
Remember when waterbeds were a thing? That was weird.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. I had one like as a little kid. My mom
good
worked for
friends
a
had one.
waterbed store.
Yeah.
And so I had a waterbed. It popped. Big surprise. Anyway, so yeah, it was like, I agree with
Was it Freddy Krueger that popped it?
Probably, right? And I just woke up in time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that before, like Freddy Krueger. So I'm glad you brought him up, because he really, like, that guy was terrifying. 1980s horror movies with those characters, like, you just don't see that anymore.
Right.
You know, we got the Saw series, which I guess kind of, right? Kind of, but
Yes.
it wasn't like, none of those were that person actually attacking and killing. It was all these different traps and things that he set up. So it wasn't the same for me.
Yeah, and that's not really I haven't sought those out or enjoyed them really. I don't care. Like, but teenage me really enjoyed,
for sure. Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street, and especially, and then some of the other ones too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good one, man. That's so good. We haven't really talked about Marvel villains. We haven't brought up any Marvel villains, and I don't want to bring like Thanos into play, because I feel like Thanos has been talked about 8 million trillion times over and over. You know, we've been exposed to him a lot. And he was great. But I do want to say that and I don't really think that this character necessarily qualifies anymore as a villain, but Loki, when Loki was when Tom Hiddleston first kind of started playing Loki, and we saw Loki go through kind of a redemption arc.
Yes, very much so.
And that happens, sometimes with characters, they go through a redemption arc. But early on, like, Loki was, I wouldn't put Loki anywhere near like the Joker. Like, he had some of that unpredictability.
Right. Yes. That he was just kind of in it for his own amusement.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't necessarily I'm going to take over the world, but just once in a while is I deserve the throne of Asgard, but mostly it's just, let's see what sort of chaos we can sow today.
Mm-hmm. I will say the one Marvel character that that I can think of off the top of my head that I've never seen run through a redemption arc before is the Red Skull.
Yeah, there's not a lot of redeeming that.
No, I mean, we're talking about the super soldier Nazi.
Yeah, there's not a lot of redeeming of the Nazis, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I can't say I'm interested in that story.
No. And so to see, Hugo Weaving did a great job of playing, Red Skull, and then he was replaced by that guy in I can't remember his name.
I can't either, but he did a great job of his voice. He sounded
because I thought it was Hugo Weaving, right?
Yeah.
But the Red Skull is and has never wavered from like his evil.
Right.
Like, there's never been a moment, kind of like the Joker. Like, never been a moment where he's changed who he is. Right.
That's true. I mean, so I do need to point out that, we kind of started with Darth Vader, who is technically a Marvel villain at this point.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't really like.
I know that's being just.
Yeah.
I'm just being a pedant, an annoying pedant.
No, that's okay.
If that's not a redundant
the
phrase.
Darth Vader comic. But he didn't start as a Marvel villain.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah. I was thinking Dr. Doom.
Oh yeah, Dr. Doom's good.
Now he has had some attempts at redemption.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole thing where he decided to be a good guy, and wasn't he the invincible Dr. Doom, and kind of took
on like an Iron Man role.
Yeah, right. And at some point in some versions he's been Sorcerer Supreme.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
And that's been interesting, but I think that's a villain that is very powerful, scary, smart.
Right.
Not quite as unpredictable as some of those other ones that he tends to be like, okay, if you leave me alone here in my country and don't try to overthrow my iron-fisted, authoritarianism rule here, will probably be okay. But then every once in a while, he wants to meddle with stuff too.
Mhm.
So there's a little bit of unpredictability there for him too.
Yeah. Although, his main thing, and I'm gonna kind of tie him a little bit in some similar areas to Black Adam.
Yeah, which we talked about a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. Both of them have had moments of being heroes.
Yeah.
Right. But their main motivation always seems to come back to taking care of the country, right? For Dr. Doom, it's Latveria. For Black Adam, it's Kahndaq. And neither one of them is shy in terms of using extreme measures
to defend their countries, right? And I think they both would see themselves as more or less the hero of their own stories, right? I don't think either one sees themselves as a villain.
No.
Whereas Joker doesn't care that he's not interested in not being a villain. He doesn't care.
No. He doesn't have that need to be anybody's savior.
Right. Right. And same with Vader.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Black Adam has a need, a desire to be the savior for his country, wants to keep everybody safe and protect everyone. Same with Doom.
Yeah.
Similar kind of arc where they're at now. And we're seeing that more and more in villains. We're seeing, obviously we're seeing that with the Kingpin run over the last couple of years with regards to being the mayor of New York. We saw it years ago when Lex Luthor became president of the United States.
Yeah.
Right. We're seeing that kind of more and more with some of the villains who might toe the line a little bit.
And I for sure think Lex Luthor would say he's the hero. He's just trying to save the world from alien, the invading all-powerful alien.
Mm-hmm.
He absolutely sees himself as a defender of the Earth.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of villains who see themselves in terms of being a savior of some kind, right? Even if it comes out of very twisted thought processes, like Sinestro, right? Has this weird thought. He left the Green Lantern Corps because if you look at modern kind of Sinestro, because he didn't believe their methods were getting it done.
Yeah.
Right. And then he formed the Sinestro Corps, which just is kind of a more extreme version and looks to kind of bring the galaxy under his protection, right? His protection.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when there has been a need, except in Injustice, he just 100% sees an avenue for him to kind of, be bad. But in some of the comics, when there's a need for him to partner with Hal for a bigger reason, he has stepped into that hero role, which he originally started in.
Yeah.
And there's some others, although there are ones that think they're heroes, but that's just because their mental faculties they can't understand, like Bizarro.
Right. Yeah. And Bizarro's not evil. He's just more like a child who's been let loose in the China, the China shop kind of thing, and just breaking things because he doesn't know any better.
Right. Yeah, he doesn't know any better. But at the same time, he definitely goes overboard on a number of occasions.
True. Yeah. Okay, so here's one. This is kind of a deep dive, although it was the main story in the first season of Jessica Jones TV show, so maybe people know it. But as far as terrifying villains, I'm gonna put Kilgrave up there, the Purple Man, because he's a guy that can control people's thoughts.
Yeah.
Or can get in their head and make them do what he wants them to do. I guess that's
with
a better way
suggestion.
To put it. Right.
He doesn't do it through telepathy. He just simply like tells them to do something.
You should go jump off a bridge, and they will go do it.
Mm-hmm. You should go
Like,
kill that person, and they go kill that person.
Right. And he doesn't seem to have any compunction about anything.
No. He's very self-serving. Like 100%. Like at the core, he's very self-serving.
Yeah. Like that's a pretty terrifying villain, really.
Yeah. In Jessica Jones, like I had a hard time with him because he's in the comics, he's the purple man.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that.
Right.
And for me, like those little things can throw me. Like it's a comic book show. Let's go ahead and adhere to like the comic book aspect. He's the purple man. Let's make him purple.
Yeah. I think he wore a lot of purple, maybe, but
but he wasn't like Kilgrave in the comics is like purple.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I'd agree with you. In the comics and even in the show, like it's a pretty terrifying like power to just be able to say something and have somebody be like, off I go.
Right. There's very little defending it. I guess if you can't hear, if you can block your ability to hear him, then you're okay. But as we've seen especially in the comics, he can control you for years.
Yeah. I think,
which is, truly evil. Like the way he would just manipulate people is like truly real world evil.
I think and as you're talking about it and you think about those kinds of things, I think sometimes the ones that strike me as being the most terrifying are the ones that mask themselves as something else. And when I think of that, I think about just recently, and we're getting ready to get another season of it, Homelander from The Boys. Right. He's, and it maybe part of it came from too the idea of like the Bizarro and the childlike thought process, because if you watch the show, like he has a high level of like insecurity stemming from how he was raised as a child. You look at the comics and how he was treated, and he was a laboratory experiment essentially, and he has essentially Superman's powers but a moral compass that is way messed up.
He has Darth Vader's moral compass.
Yeah, he's got Darth Vader. It's a great way to put it. He's got Darth Vader's moral compass.
If you offend him in any way, if he decides you're just no longer useful to him, there's a good chance you're going to end up in a pile of ash from his.
Have you watched the animated shorts that they did on Amazon yet?
Not.
The last one is specifically around him.
Okay.
And his first like mission as a member of VOT, and go watch it. It's really, really good. Totally worth checking out. So, I mean, we could go on and on.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, obviously there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them.
Yeah, but for sake of time.
Yeah. Was there any last one on the list that you really, really wanted to at least briefly mention?
No, I think there's, like I said, if I start mentioning more, like we're here for a whole lot longer. And I think what I'd like to know is from all our listeners, like who'd we miss that they are, when they think of the quintessential like epic villain, what's that look like? Who is that?
Yeah. And what are some other avenues? Like, are there some villains from anime that I don't have the,
for sure.
I don't have the touchstone for that to pull that out. Like who's that? Who would that be? Who should we check out in there?
In My Hero Academia falls into that category. There's a bunch of them.
I'm sure. Yeah, I assume there are. Like what are some other, not genres, but what are some other properties that have a really good villain that we haven't talked about? Teach us, people. Enlighten us.
Give us your thoughts.
Yeah.
Tell us who we miss.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. Hope you had fun with this. We always have a good time. And be sure to check us out on all the ways. Leave us some comments or send us an email. We're old. We read email still. You can do that. Yeah.
All the time.
Yep.
All the time.
We appreciate all the ways that you've been engaging with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Next week. Yep. Until then, see ya, true believers. Bye.
Bye, guys.